Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to do our third 2024-2025 winter look ahead. Now the past two updates we've had a look at September's and October's data for the longer range monthly charts from the ECMWF, look at some various other charts looking specifically at the stratosphere, as that does have a very strong correlation to blocking patterns that we see at the surface. Now, of course, we haven't got November's longer range data, which is really the last sort of long range data that is relevant for the winter. That will be coming out in the coming days. So I thought, as we are now heading towards the start of November, we're starting to get winter potential into the time frame, i.e. sort of mid-November onwards is when the possibility of something widely cold becomes a possibility. So we'll still have a look at the ECMWF charts, but we're going to have a look at the extended range charts, which go out to about 6 weeks. Now that means we can extend all the way towards the middle portion of December. So of course, we'll be able to see the risk of any early season blocking patterns, potentially colder weather, and what the current medium range outlook is. We'll also finish the video by updating you all on the stratosphere, as we do get more frequent data from that. And again, it is looking like we've got a fairly strong polar vortex to start the winter. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now we'll first start by having a look at the most important charts, really, the pressure charts. This is give us all the information we really need. All the other charts kind of feed off this. Of course, we are looking at the 500 HPA height anomalies. These are the weekly mean anomalies. This is not what we're seeing day to day, but over the course of a week or so, this is what we'll be seeing. And you can see the valid time here is next Monday. So Monday the 4th until Monday the 11th. And you can see the base time, so when this data has been generated, is Halloween. And that's the same day I am recording this. So this is completely up to date, the most up to date data we have. Now you can see for the upcoming week, we've got high pressure sat right over the top of us. And that is exactly what we've been seeing in our daily videos. We do look at sort of the GFS, GM, ECMWF, sort of 10-day, 14-day charts. Exactly what we're seeing. High pressure slap bang over the top of us. And that looks like it's going to continue all of next week. Now, as we head into the following week, we still see high pressure over the top of us, but it starts to slip away. We'll perhaps start to see signs of that on some of those longer range charts. Again, that's something we'll touch upon in tomorrow's video as well, as we'll go back to our normal forecasting. But you can see low pressure starting to be a bit more of an influence towards Scandinavia, Iceland and Greenland, perhaps giving more unsettled conditions further northwards, drier still further southwards, and with that stronger gradient between high pressure, low pressure, it probably would draw up more of a southwesterly wind, so it'd probably actually be a little bit milder as well. Now into the following week, we're starting to get more into the extended range now. High pressure is extending in once again. But you see, it's not dominating across much of southern and eastern Europe. Now what that means is the high pressure is extending more from the Azores and less from sort of a European high perspective. Now again, probably won't equate in major changes, but it does allow the risk of more of an easterly or northeasterly flow to develop. Again, could develop slightly chillier conditions, slightly frostier, potentially. You can see low pressure is nowhere near close by, so essentially meaning ruling us out of much precipitation. Now the following chart is further development of that high pressure system. It's slipping further westwards, and you can see out across much of the North Atlantic we've got a very positive high pressure anomaly. Now it doesn't mean there's not going to be any low pressure around. It just means that there's higher than average pressure out in the North Atlantic compared to what we'd expect this time of year. And of course this extends in the first couple of days of December. From the looks further eastwards, you can see much of southern and eastern Europe is still in this lull, where it is most likely filled with weak lower pressure. And with this sort of pattern, we'd expect to see very cold conditions for much of eastern Europe. So really early onset of winter potentially there with this flow. Now into the following week, again, still very similar, but we're starting to see that high pressure retrogress further and further westwards. Now here, again, we're still under mostly higher pressure, but that wind direction is tilting more to a north to northwesterly, which could start to encourage slightly chillier conditions. Again, further unsettled weather further northwards, as we do see lower pressure trying to nudge in. Again, look at these blues that are starting to migrate towards Scandinavia. Again, potentially showing some cold, lower pressure lobes of the tropospheric polar vortex moving towards northern Europe. Now, into the following week, the last chart we have, we see something very interesting indeed. High pressure really dominating out in the North Atlantic, up towards Greenland, northeast Canada, essentially cutting off that flat westerly flow. And from the looks of this, you'd probably be encouraging northerly winds, which would be cold, potentially even wintry. So perhaps the first couple of weeks of December, maybe late November, is going to contain some colder conditions. Again, because these weekly anomalies, they could be hiding sort of oscillating patterns within sight. This could very easily be sort of northerly blasts, where it's a couple of days of cold conditions, a couple of days of mild conditions, oscillating between. It could very easily be that, and the mean comes out to something like this. So again, one to keep a very close eye on. But for sort of sustained cold weather, the worry, if you are looking forward to that, is this high pressure down towards the Mediterranean. Ideally, if you were going to see very cold conditions that last a long period of time, you'd see low pressure plunge southwards and open the door to northeasterly, northerly winds. Here, because there's high pressure sat over the Mediterranean, it would trap a bit of warmth here, and essentially means that these lows are not able to clear, and it could allow low pressure to break in from the mid-Atlantic. So that, again, is a risk, but again, we are really extrapolating there, because it is very difficult to say exactly what is happening here, because these are, as I said, mean anomalies. But again, interesting, and again, not charts that indicate flat westerlies, very strong low pressure, not got a lot of blues here at all, which means the high pressure blocking we have around at the moment, although it's not in a cold position, looks like it is going to stay. And if you look at the odds, then there's probably a pretty high chance that at some point that block develops in a position that does encourage something colder. And that could be happening here into early December. Now again, these are the same ECMWF charts, but this is looking at temperature instead. Now, of course, as we go out to the extended range, the anomalies do become weaker. So we're not expecting to see big blues at this time frame, especially into December. But again, it's trends. And because of course, the warming climate, we're looking at anomalies that compared to, a couple of decades ago, we are more inclined to see red. So anything cold, we'd say is more of a neutral, especially in the longer range. So don't expect to see big blues. You can see, though, blues at the moment, and that's because we are in the shorter range. And there's much higher confidence for much of Eastern Europe with this big area of high pressure over the top of us. Can see into next week, still very strong signal of reds, but again, you can already see it's decreasing, and that's because of the uncertainty into the longer time frame. As we head towards the end of November, that warmth starts to migrate further westwards. Again, more whites developing across Europe. Again, overnight frosts, potentially chilly conditions, still very cold across the Eastern Europe. So as I said a few minutes ago, very cold start to winter for Eastern Europe for much of November into early December here. Similar charts, and then as you head into early December, we start to see something colder develop towards Iceland. Still very mild towards the North Atlantic, which indicates that perhaps this is high pressure, low pressure, northerly flow, or east northerlies attempting to push in. And then finally into the final frame, again, much colder conditions to our north, much milder across the North Atlantic. Again, when we do see very very unsettled conditions, big flat westerlies, we normally see lots of cold air pulling out of northeast Canada and Greenland, fueling those low pressure systems. With that colder anomaly more towards Iceland, Scandinavia, that could indicate more northerly flows. You can see here for the UK, we're average to slightly above average, which, as I said, is not actually too bad if you're looking for something slightly colder. And that is just because it is very difficult, especially where we are close to the warm Atlantic Ocean, very difficult for these models to predict anything below average more than sort of a week or two in advance. So again, very interesting, and this follows on very well by the precipitation charts, which give an even better picture, because this again can show us where we're more likely to see those high pressure, low pressure systems develop. And you can see much of Europe, as expected, is orange here, which means well below average precipitation. Green is above average. Next week, very similar, but more greens towards northern areas of the British Isles, again indicating lower pressure could be coming back in for Scotland. Still dry though further southwards. Bit of a weaker signal here, but still kind of oscillating between dry further southwards, wetter further northwards. And you can see very wet towards the North Atlantic to the south of Greenland. That would indicate that we have got very strong low pressure systems coming out of Greenland and northeast Canada. But into the following week, look what happens. All that precipitation migrates towards Scandinavia, Northern Europe and Iceland. High pressure and drier conditions, northeast Canada, the North Atlantic, potentially southern Greenland as well. Now, from the looks of that, if again I was trying to sort of place the pattern here, I'd say big high pressure towards the North Atlantic, low pressure towards Scandinavia. Doesn't guarantee cold weather, but it's definitely a colder or cooler setup with the wind direction more from a north or northwesterly direction. Again, if that high pressure really gets going, maybe even north or northeasterly, which then would be cold or very cold as we head into early December. And you can see the following chart, very similar. Actually, dry conditions towards Iceland and more towards Greenland and the North Atlantic developing again, potentially showing a northeasterly or easterly flow. Again, not guaranteed, but again, the indications are there. This is not a flat westerly. These are not flat westerlies appearing on this latest ECMWF weekly mean anomalies. And then the final chart, we have got lots of low pressure coming in, still lots of high pressure to our west and dry conditions, but also some green starting to appear, perhaps a bit of a breakthrough trying to be attempted by the polar vortex back across North America. So very interesting. We are extrapolating. We are trying to understand these charts, trying to understand what is going on. And we've had a good go at it. And you can see it's not the ordinary flat westerly. That is definitely guaranteed. Whether it will be sustained cold weather, very difficult to say at this time frame. Impossible to say. But definitely looks like there is possibility there. And given the stratospheric forecast we'll look at in a minute's time, you'd expect to be seeing a flat westerly from the latest looks of the stratosphere. So it is encouraging seeing that we've got perhaps signs of a bit of a disconnect, which will keep things a little bit more interesting. Because sometimes if we do get that polar vortex up in the stratosphere, really connected to the troposphere, it can be a westerly fest for weeks on end. It can be very stormy, very unsettled, lots of flooding, lots of rain, and generally nothing particularly wintry. And I know that does disappoint a lot of people in around the Christmas time especially. Now, do go over and have a look at, just to finish, the weather regime. So this is, again, looking at a similar pattern, but we've got it categorized into different sort of North Atlantic regimes. You've got the positive NAO, so that's low pressure towards Greenland, Iceland, and the North Atlantic. High pressure towards the Azores, flat westerly. Block, which is that red colour, that is looking potentially as a Scandinavian block, or just generally high pressure sat towards or over the top of us, and you can see that coming in the next week or so. Negative NAO, that's more blocking towards North Atlantic, Greenland, Iceland, ATR, which is an Atlantic ridge. So again, not quite penetrating right into Greenland, but still developing in the North Atlantic, giving lots of amplification, and kind of grey here, no regimes are kind of in between. You can see as we head into the longer range, definitely quite a big mix between blues, reds and greys. So again, no massive sign of a negative NAO, but that is very difficult to see that in that extended range. But one thing I will say is there is a very even split. Yes, there are some darker blues and some large proportion of blues, 30-40% at times, but it's not the 60-70% that we can see sometimes, indicating that although westerlies are, the natural regime, they are, of course, higher probability for a good period of the next couple of weeks, they're nowhere near dominating, and there is quite an even split, which again is encouraging and leaving things still up in the air a little bit. And as we'll see now from the stratosphere, you would expect from the looks of these charts to see westerlies completely dominating. Now you can see we are pretty much bang around average at the moment, 30th of October here for the polar vortex. So the winds up at 10 HPA, high up in the atmosphere over the stratosphere, and that does power the winds going down through the atmosphere, encouraging a westerly flow. And again, that is not conducive of colder conditions. When the winds coming in from the west is coming off the warm North Atlantic, bringing in mild, wet, and generally windy conditions. And you can see over the next couple of weeks, we are kind of hovering around average or above average, dip slightly below there, maybe into the middle of November. But into late November and early December, we are very high, right up towards the top percentiles there. There's a few anomalous runs that are going below average, but look at the weakest runs. They're only around 10 or 15 meters per second, which is actually very high. Normally we see, a handful going for a sudden stratospheric warming. Never happens in reality, but always a couple there. None here, which indicates there is a very strong signal for a strong polar vortex into early December. And I said, if this couples with the troposphere, so where our weather takes place, then it could be a very big westerly fest into towards the Christmas period. But as I said, the ECMWF charts we just looked at are not conducive, and this is the ECMWF run as well. So again, it just shows you that the ECMWF is seeing a bit of a disconnect, not complete correlation. Again, it doesn't happen all the time, but there is normally a correlation and causation there. But not seeing it today, which is encouraging, which means that if you are just looking at the stratosphere charts, that's it. You'd be looking at those and thinking all hope is lost for anything other than a westerly flow. But that's not what we're seeing. And then just to finish the video by looking at the GFS, this is the same sort of data, but it's shown in more of a picture here. You can see the time on the bottom goes out to the next 2 weeks, so not quite as extended as the ECMWF. You've got the pressure level, 1000 HPA, which is down towards the surface, one right up, getting out towards the top of the stratosphere. And you can see the winds in meters per second on the right. And you can see as we get lower down the atmosphere, the winds are lighter, the flows are not quite as strong. But you can see high up, very strong westerly flow starting to appear, 35, 45 meters per second up towards that 10 HPA level. And you can see on the right is the anomaly, what we'd expect to see this time of year. A little bit of blues here or there in the next couple of weeks lower down in the atmosphere. And again, that's expected with not a massively westerly flow at the moment, but high up in the atmosphere, a pretty positive signal, 5 to 10 meters per second above average. So pretty strong anomaly for the next couple of weeks up in the stratosphere. But fortunately, we're not seeing that coupling yet in the troposphere. Still could happen, but at the moment, encouraging signs that there is a risk of something colder into November and December. Again, we'll have another update out next week. We might have a look at these charts for that again, but I think we'll focus once again on those monthly charts, which do get us out to sort of January, February, March, where again there is quite significant interest. We'll have to wait and see what is happening. But again, another update, which isn't guaranteeing cold weather, but it's definitely not ruling it out and definitely giving there a good chance that at least we see something transient or something colder at times. Not seeing a massive sort of beast in the east pattern or December to remember where, it's a very long, severe period. We're not seeing that, but what we are seeing are signs that colder patterns could develop at times or could appear within the overall flow. As said, just got to wait and see. Got a couple of weeks now until cold weather becomes a possibility, kind of mid-November, sort of 15th, 20th of November. Beyond that, that is when we start to see the risk of widespread cold. Again, it's higher through December into January, and it peaks around January, February, but the risk starts to exist during mid-November. So we'll have to wait and see and keep you updated on these longer range charts and, of course, in our daily videos as well. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.